The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Great crowds were traveling with Jesus, and he turned and addressed them. If anyone comes to me without hating his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Which of you, wishing to construct a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if there is enough for its completion? Otherwise, after laying the foundation and finding himself unable to finish the work, the onlookers should laugh at him and say, "This one began to build but did not have the resources to finish." Or what kind of king marching into battle would not first sit down and decide whether with 10,000 troops he can successfully oppose another man, advancing upon him with 20,000 troops? But if not, while he is still far away, he will send a delegation to ask for peace terms. In the same way, any one of you who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciple. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Please take just a moment to pray to the Holy Spirit for each other. Hate is a pretty strong and offensive word. But we heard that word hate used a lot in this morning's gospel. It's hard to figure out that that's supposed to be the good news. It reminded me of a story of an older man named George, who was hated by most people in his community. He did a lot of bad things to a lot of people. And at George's wake, at the funeral home, the minister there said, "I know that most people in this community hated George. This morning we're gathered here to remember his good points, so I want to hear you all say some good things about George up here in the castle." The room was dead silent. Finally, the minister says, "Now I know you all hated George, but there has to be some things that you can come up about him, some good things that you can say about George." Still silent. Finally, the minister gets frustrated and says, "We're not leaving this funeral home until somebody says something good about George." Somebody says, "Well, his brother was worse." But in that gospel, we hear the word hate coming out of Jesus' mouth a lot. I don't know about you, but it's not easy to take. When I think about Jesus, I think about love, mercy, forgiveness, reconciliation. But this morning, he's talking about hate. He's saying when you construct a tower, if you don't build a foundation first, it's not going to work. If you don't have the resources you need, it's not going to happen. And he says if a king goes into battle and doesn't plan first the troops that he needs, if he's not prepared, that's not going to work. What's worse, at the end, after all this stuff about hate, Jesus says, if you don't renounce all your possessions, you can't be my disciple. I thought some of you would have left on that one. I don't know about you, but it'd be tough to renounce all of my possessions. But Jesus kind of takes it a step further even. He says you have to take up your cross and follow me. Wow. It's a lot of demands Jesus gives us this week. Makes it sound almost impossible to follow him and be a Christian. But Jesus knows we're human. He knows we all make mistakes. How many of us have started a project and didn't plan ahead of time? Or start a project and not have the things that we need to complete that project? How many of us have not called a group together and not had the people that we needed on that committee? We all make mistakes. It's impossible not to make mistakes on this world. So is Jesus saying that you can't make any mistakes or you're not going to make it into heaven? Not at all. We have to remember that Jesus also said at one point in time, for man, these things are impossible, but for God, all things are possible. And that's the key to all this negative talk that Jesus is giving us this week. He's reminding us that we have to keep our priorities straight, because sometimes we get so busy that we get them backwards. As we know, hate is the opposite of love. God is love. Jesus was God. So Jesus wasn't promoting hate in any way. In Jesus' day, the word hate meant to love less. So what he's saying is, you have to love God first and love all these other possessions and things a little bit less if you want to follow me. God is the source of all love. If we put God first in our life, all those other things will fall in line. But we often get so busy that we get off track. Think about it on a daily basis. Do you start the morning with prayer, giving that day to God? Do you end the day with God, going to prayer, thanking Him for the gifts of the day, thinking about what you could have done differently? Do you give your life to God one day at a time and trust that He's going to take care of that day instead of worrying about all the things in the future? Do you just come to Mass, or do you get involved in the parish and in your community? Do you really put God first in your life? The second step of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I've gotten to know pretty well in the last 6 months. After step 1, admitting to our sinfulness and our faults, step 2 says, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Basically, that's what this gospel this week is saying. God is that power greater than ourselves. When we put God first, it makes everything make sense and restores us to sanity. So you can rest assured that Jesus isn't asking you to hate anyone this week. Life is a series of choices. When we choose to put Him first and His love first, everything else will fall right in line.